Military and financial aid to Ukraine is not spending on Ukraine, but in investment in peace, security, and very preservation of life. Good afternoon, this is Henry Keane on UATV English. Yet another attempt to break this hard truth into easy terms in this weekly episode for the whole free world directly from Ukraine as usual. On December 6th, the draft law on providing aid to Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan did not pass a procedural vote in the Senate of the United States Congress. If you think that United States aid is necessary for Ukraine only to restore the territorial integrity of our state, you are wrong. Believe it or not, it is an irreplaceable component of democracy fighting lawlessness and terror. While the Western world pays money, we pay with our blood. And Ukraine highly values the unchanging position and significant contribution of the United States of America to ensuring peace and security in Europe. That is why it is nothing but regrettable to observe the inability of the Congress to reach a consensus on a matter of utter emergency, and in the successful completion of which the entire democratic world is interested. We hope that the draft law on aid to Ukraine will be put to a vote again in the nearest future, and this time the US Congress will approve a package of defense, budgetary, humanitarian and energy support for Ukraine in 2024, even before Christmas, just because you, dear world, need that just as well.
If Putin takes Ukraine, he won't stop there. It's important to see the long run here. He's going to keep going. He's made that pretty clear. If Putin attacks a NATO ally, if he keeps going, and then he attacks a NATO ally, well, we've committed as a NATO member that we defend every inch of NATO territory. Make no mistake, today's vote's going to be long remembered, and history's going to judge harshly those who turn their back on freedom's cause. We can't let Putin win. Say it again, we can't let Putin win. It's in our overwhelming national interest and international interest of all our friends. Any disruption in our ability to supply Ukraine clearly strengthens Putin's position. We've run out of money to be able to do that in terms of authorization.
And to those of you who dare to call true some things that they're just too lazy to learn it themselves, no worries, you have UATV English, us to put the truth in easy terms for you. America spends about $1 trillion a year on military purposes. Ukraine needs just about 5% of that to get rid of the oldest American adversary ever, Soviet Russia. And also, by the way, testing all the weapons that the US is sitting on in stockpiles today in a real combat without even setting one American soldier's foot into a war zone. And actually win a war for freedom for America's sake, and not just a procedural voting for some Republicans or Democrats. Yet currently the USA has announced the provision of another package of military aid to Ukraine in the amount of $175 million, which includes ammunition, vehicles for towing and transporting equipment, equipment of the protection of critical infrastructure facilities, spare parts, etc. Addressing the US Congress, President Joe Biden said that if Putin is not stopped, Americans will see how the American military will fight against the Russians. Ukraine's victory is also a matter of US national security and global security in general. I know that to many of you, Russia's attack on NATO countries seems impossible. Now, well, I wish that wishful thinking would really work in our world, because I was wishing 2 years ago that an attack on Ukraine would never happen, just because it seemed to be impossible as Putin's attack on NATO from today's political perspective. However, it completely does not matter what we all wish to believe in. The bare fact is the Kremlin is preparing Russian society for war against the West. It is happening right now as we speak, and if you do not see it or believe in it, it doesn't matter. Well, then Russian propaganda is working all right. This is exactly what Putin wants you to do. Nothing. Putin wants you to just sit and wait while he terrorizes and blackmails the world while it has stuck in procedural voting. Well, mark my words, this is no bluff. This is a preparation of aggression of Russia. The West should not underestimate Russia's military potential. The war in Donbass and the Azov region is a training ground for Russian army to acquire advanced military experience, which the armies of the West simply lack. Well, because if think like who needs real experience, if you can procedurally vote our adversary away, I hate to break to you in such an easy term, you can't. On December 5th, 1994, Ukraine signed the Budapest Memorandum on Security Guarantees and Nuclear Disarmament with the United States, Great Britain and Russia. 29 years ago, Ukraine simply gave out its third world largest nuclear arsenal, relying on international security guarantees. Yes, these very guarantees that Putin spits at today and sleeps well, I believe. By the Budapest Memorandum, the signatory states undertook to respect the sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity of Ukraine, as well as to refrain from the threat of force or the use of force and economic pressure. So now, with the Budapest Memorandum not even somewhat working, what will? Russia grossly violated all and every of its own international obligations, attacked Ukraine and threatened it with the same nuclear weapons previously obtained from Kiev after the Budapest Memorandum was signed. In the conditions of the direct existential threat for Ukraine coming from the Russian Federation, of course, Ukraine can no longer rely on empty promises and chooses a strategic course to join NATO. As an intermediate stage, Ukraine is counting on the collective security guarantees defined in the NATO summit in Vilnius. In order to develop this initiative, Kiev has started consultations with the European Union. So please, dear world, stop talking about Ukraine like it is a sort of a beggar that is asking for money and how you don't like it. And please stop asking why Ukraine just wouldn't give out its sovereignty and freedom and kids and people and lands to Putin already, just as it once did with its nuclear weapons in exchange for some international agreements that just do not work somehow in the end. Well, this is exactly why, because no international agreements with Russia are working. And this is exactly why we are not asking for aid, but kindly giving a free world a chance to prove that a core human value, the one that the free world says it is professing, just well as our soldiers that are dying for it on the battlefield, fighting brutal Russian aggression. The value of freedom is simply not lost anymore somewhere in between procedural voting. Ukrainian counteroffensive, in easy terms, is as following. The defense forces of Ukraine are getting stronger, gaining valuable experience in combat operations, mastering the latest weapons and equipment. Even in the conditions of delayed and insufficient sometimes supplies of weapons, military equipment and ammunition by the allies, the Ukrainian launched a counteroffensive and achieved a lot in the front line. The success of a counteroffensive is not measured only by kilometres or troop advance. Ukrainian soldiers managed to inflict colossal losses on the enemy, exhaust his reserves, disrupt logistics.
Ukraine will fight for its own interests, for the fair interests of every free nation. Because when we can defend ourselves, it strengthens everyone else in the world, who, like us in Ukraine, values freedom and the international order. I thank everyone who is fighting and working for Ukraine.
At the same time, attempts of enemy offensives in several directions were successfully repelled. During 2023, the defense forces opened hostilities on the seafront, inflicted a series of painful blows and defeats on the enemy fleet, and secured a Sea of Grain corridor without the participation of Russia, just by the way, gaining an important bridgehead on the left bank of the Kherson region just as well. Unfortunately, 2023 did not bring the long-awaited liberation to many enemy-occupied towns and villages in eastern Ukraine yet. However, what has been returned to Ukraine already came at a greatest price, at the price of lives of the best of us. The hard work is onwards. Let 2024 be the year of victory and complete the occupation of Ukraine. Slava Ukraini. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro initiated preparations to annex Guyana Essequiba. Ukraine strongly condemns any attempts of annexation in the world and will not recognize illegal changes in state borders. Told you, bad guys are watching closely. Russia's illegal annexation of Ukraine's territory has set a dangerous pattern for dictatorial regimes worldwide. The Kremlin's goal is not just to seize some land in Ukraine now, but to destroy international law as such, which is based, among other things, on respect for the core values as freedom and sovereignty and territorial integrity of state. Maduro is a Putin of a sort, if you like. At least he is clearly an ally of Russian tyrant. as he imitates Putin behavior and perhaps cooperates with the Russian dictator closely. This is a Russian way to do international politics. Terror, destruction, lies, anything to divert the world's attention from the Kremlin's war of aggression against Ukraine. Russia is making efforts to destabilize the Middle East, the African continent, and Latin America.
The resolution of any disputed issue and disagreement shall be done only on the basis of the mechanism provided for the international law, in accordance with the purpose and principles of the UN Charter. The parties to the dispute must comply with the legally binding order of the International Court of Justice on provisional measures and must not resort to unilateral action that could aggravate the situation. Comment of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
Also, Brazilian President Lula da Silva invited Putin to the G20 summit and at the same time warned that Putin would be arrested on the basis of an ICC warrant. Oops, that was awkward. Silva backed away from his previous words when he promised that Brazil would not arrest the Russian president. Now, for the sake of the Kremlin dictator, Brazil looks like not wanting to violate the Rome Statute anymore. That means that, fearing criminal prosecution, the Russian dictator does not appear at many important events, such as BRICS Summit, for example, in South Africa, or the G20 in India. Even Putin allies cannot guarantee him personal inviolability on their territory. Some countries, like, for example, a CSTO member Armenia, ratified the Rome Statute already after Putin was indicted, and that show a direct attitude to the whole thing. Putin's crimes have made him an exile and a toxic figure almost everywhere in the world. The verdict of the ICC closed the door for Putin to most countries of the world. However, even more punishment awaits, according to the verdicts of international courts. Well, when all doors close, Russian dictator might want to start using Windows. I mean the software. It has a fine online tool for that, just I don't know if they have a bunker version of that. Also, Putin informed all of us lately that he is ready to run for another presidential term. What is it, fourth, fifth? Oh, who cares, right? We all know that an urn with Putin's ashes will be seen first, then a voting urn with someone else's name in it. I mean, Putin owns the Russian ballot, of course. And that makes it not a ballot at all. With no alive, at least, political adversaries, no opposition at all, no threat of any sort to his unilateral taric power. So the whole intrigue here is not about will Putin become a president of Russia, but maybe he will finally end up with the next logical move on his way to his even more absolute power. Why not becoming a Russian Tsar officially already? Say, Putin the Great, or the First the Great. I'm sure the Russian nation will adore it, just as it was the case 5 times ago. I don't remember already, so why not to fix it all, really? And there is no need to vote on all since then. Oh, finally, a brave new Russian world. Time for more on UATV English. You ask hard questions and we answer in easy terms. And now the question of the week, voiced by the user SonicBoy150. The question is, how come Ukraine didn't occupy their land back from Russians yet? Dear SonicBoy150, I understand a touch of irritation in your tone, no? We all want our land back. We want it so much, some even are ready to die for it. Moreover, some do die and actually are dying right now as we're speaking, and I'm answering your question. I could have now been explaining you in a way I did a million times before why cats are cats and not dogs, and why exactly our Ukrainian army cannot battle according to NATO war doctrine that ensures fast occupation. Because NATO war doctrine means massive aviation support and only then ground operations. And we simply do not have enough aviation, dear SonicBoy150, unfortunately. Way not enough. So our brave men and women, those willing to die for their land, are doing exactly what Allied aviation, the one promised and still not there, remember, should have done 1.5 years ago. Then it would have made a heck of a difference. It is true that even now we need those jets, as the aviation is a queen of war, but momentum is the king of it. And Russians were not just sitting and waiting for those American F-16s to deliver them the Ukrainian message, if you know what I mean. They were digging into the ground, deep into our land, and it takes our lives to kick them out of that. And there are mines around, like millions of them. Huge territories are mined. That also could be a reason why our counter-offensive is not going fast enough for some. However, if you have any better plan, please shoot it out. I'll be ready to deliver it to our Commander-in-Chief, Valery Zaluzhny. Not really, just kidding. He's quite busy with deflecting an existential threat to Ukraine, but you keep on asking. It was fun. That was all, folks. It was me, Henry Keane, doing my best to break the hard truth in easy terms for you in our weekly wrap-up tonight. Please find UATV English online, and if you like what we do for you, please like us in return, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think. Your opinion matters. Do not hesitate to ask us a question as well, and next time in our weekly episode, I'll do my best to answer it. Please stay safe and tune for more on UATV English. See you soon. Ready tomorrow.